All right, welcome back to Virtual School Assembly. Today our guest is Drake Callender. Drake is a professional soccer player from Sacramento, California. He played his collegiate career at Berkeley and currently plays professionally for Intermiami CF, a new MLS franchise. Aside from soccer, Drake loves the outdoors, creative writing and art, and finding new methods for improving his health. Above all else, he prioritizes learning through reading, writing, listening, and experiencing to ensure that he continues to build critical thinking and communication skills. Drake, as I mentioned to you before, I think you're the first soccer player on this show, so we're especially excited to have you here. Welcome to Virtual School Assembly.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to participate today.
Yeah, so let's dive right into this. I want to know kind of your story. So lots of kids want to become professional athletes, and a lot want to become professional soccer players, but very, very few make it. What was it like for you growing up in California and playing soccer? Did you always want to be a professional player?
Yeah, so growing up, I played a lot of sports, but there's something about soccer that it just really drew me in. I played baseball, basketball, ran track and field, played a year of football, but soccer was always, when like the seasons came around, it was always a sport that I was looking forward to the most. Start out in recreational leagues and slowly move my way up to competitive leagues. And then finally, during my sophomore year of high school, I had the opportunity to join an academy team, which back then was the highest level for youth play. And from there, it was the San Jose Earthquakes Academy, and then played there for 2.5 years. And then from there, I was fortunate enough to get noticed by UC Berkeley and have a full career there. So that was kind of, in a nutshell, the transition from being, a young player to going into college and playing.
Okay, well, let's dig into that a little bit from your sophomore year. Now, you got on this academy team. Have you switched positions at all? You're a goalkeeper now, correct?
Yes.
And has that always been the case, or have you moved around a bit?
Yeah, so I moved around. When I was younger, I loved playing on the field. I was always kind of like the bigger player. I think right now I'm like 6'3". So growing up, I was always kind of, like the taller, kind of more athletic player. So I played forward, and I just loved running. I love scoring goals. And then I would say I was 12 or 13, and I also played indoor soccer. Yeah, like a indoor season. And there was one game where our goalie got injured, or they needed someone to play goalie. And I was like, my coach was like, Drake, can you do it? I was like, yeah, I'll hop in. And I loved it. I had a really good game. It was one of my first times playing goalkeeper. But from that point on, it became I could play on the field or in the goal. And then through middle school and the first part of high school, I played kind of like in between, like half on the field, half in goal. And then when I joined the academy, I just went full goalkeeper. So I was about 15 when I committed to the position fully. And from then on, it was just, I just felt like I had a lot to learn about the position. And I had a lot of work to do to become a top player in that league, and also to be able to perform at my best while I was in college.
Right. Now, it sounds like you are already playing at a pretty elite level, even as early as your sophomore year of high school. How did you get to that point? How did you get to be one of the top performing players in your city?
Yeah, so, I like I said before, I started in like the rec league when I was younger, and I slowly moved up to the competitive league, and then finally the academy league. And so it was joining the academy league and being coached by, my coach at the San Jose Earthquake Academy. His name was Henry Folk. And he was a really good coach. He was also a coach at UC Berkeley. And so he saw potential in me, and he was the one who offered me a spot at Cal. And so it was I definitely wasn't, I was athletic, I was big, but I need a lot of work on like my technique and my skills and like my footwork. And so just being able to work around that team when I was in the academy, those players were very good. I felt that since I was playing with players that were better than me, I naturally just improved. There's something about surrounding yourself with, hard workers, leaders, that it definitely made me understand, the level that I could potentially play at, because I wasn't always like the top dog or like the best player, but having like that competitiveness, within me as being an athlete and trying to improve and compete with, the guys that already been in the academy for years before me, really helped me grow into who I am as a person, but also as an athlete.
Very cool. Now, when did you start getting interest from different universities, or were you just looking at Cal the whole time? What was that process like for you?
Yeah, so to be honest, when I had joined the academy, no college coaches had ever reached out. I had maybe been to one like it was like a weekend camp where college coaches could come and see your skills. But before Cal had reached out, I hadn't gotten reached out by any other university or college. And so that was the only school that really showed interest. And it was because I wasn't necessarily on the radar when I had gone to the academy. And it wasn't even throughout the academy and before I went to college, no other schools had really reached out aside from Cal. And so I was like, Cal's a great school. It's in Northern California. It's close enough for my parents to come and watch me. And the Bay Area is just a great environment, with San Francisco being over there and just like the whole area. Me being able to play kind of in Northern California where I grew up was very attractive at the time. So I wasn't necessarily a top player, but I was able to, be given a chance, and with that chance being given, I really took advantage and worked really hard and improved my game as much as possible. Because, before joining the academy, I hadn't necessarily thought of what college I wanted to go to. And so when this was put in front of me, I was like, okay, I'm going to go for it 100%.
So you went to Cal. I know you still have a few courses to wrap up before you graduate, but you're there for 4 years, and Cal is one of the top academic institutions in the whole country. What was it like being a student athlete at an elite institution like that?
Yeah, so the student athlete life at Cal, and I think this goes for any university, is very difficult. It challenges you. I'll kind of do it chronologically, freshman to senior year. When you first get there, it's very overwhelming. Of course, for sports, so the level of play is increasing. The academics is more demanding, in terms of time and work you have to do and participation. So the freshman year was a very kind of like break-in year. It took me a while to really, figure out a routine that works. Just day to day, like making sure I was getting all my nutrition in and, preparing myself the best way possible for practice and going to classes and doing all my studying. So like the first year was very challenging, but like the second year, you have more confidence going into it because you've done it before. But, it's still like of course, as you go through school, the courses get harder. And then as you go through your sport on like your team, you almost have more responsibility now having had a year, and within my team, my coach was big on leadership from everyone, whether you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior. We needed to be a team of leaders. And so, yeah, it was definitely really like my junior year where I felt like I kind of knew like how to be a student athlete. I could say I figured it out like I was figuring out like the first 2 years. Well, like the third year was really when I was like, all right, like I know, like I feel like I've succeeded. I feel like I've failed, and I've learned a lot these first 2 years. And there's almost less room for not okay. I would say like there's less room for failure in my junior and senior years, but also understanding that like there are going to be times where whether you're in a game or at practice and you're not going to have like the best day, or you're not going to do that well on an assignment or on like a final. But I didn't really let that get in the way of reaching my goals. I just kind of took it as like a lesson to learn from adversity, really. And so it was really like my senior year that I just locked it down and just, try to do the best I could in school and perform the best in the season, because I knew I would be leaving that fall semester,
right,
to pursue pro. And I didn't necessarily know what, where, or how that was going to happen. There's a lot of unknowns up until it actually happens. So
right.
yeah, that's kind of in a
Well,
nutshell.
let's talk about that transition then, because you now are a pro. And so from fall to now, a lot has changed, and the soccer world has changed a lot just because of what's happened with COVID-19. But talk about, how did you get signed with Miami, and what was that transition like for you?
Yeah, so I had I really learned about the opportunity to play in Miami during my fall season this past October, November. And I was still in my fall season. And we had a few more games left in regular season, and we had chances of making it to the playoffs. And this is a time where, teams are really kind of gearing up for the coming season, because the 2020 season starts in March, and preseason starts in January, and they have the draft at the end of the year once the college teams are done. But also there was an expansion draft this year because we had two teams entering into the league, Nashville SC and also Intermiami CF. And so I had learned during my second to last game when we were playing up at UW that there was a possibility of my player rights being traded to Intermiami during the expansion draft. My player rights are pretty much, I played for the San Jose Earthquakes Academy. And so because I played for that academy, they own your player rights if they decide to draft you out of college. And I ended up not going to San Jose, but my player rights were traded during the expansion draft to Intermiami. And so that was kind of how I got in the loop with Intermiami. And then once my senior season ended, then there was 2 or 3 weeks left for me to finish my semester, say goodbye to all my friends that I met in college, all the staff and all my coaches and everything. And then between the middle of December and the end of the year is just spending time with family and friends from home. Mm-hmm. All the while still training for the professional season. And because it wasn't in the college draft, I didn't have a big sign day or anything. I still signed, but it wasn't this big, congratulations, you became a pro. It was more just all right, you did it, and now it's time for the next step. And so, here we are 6 months later, or I guess 6 months out of me ending my time at Cal. And in that time frame, I've learned a lot about, the level of play at the professional level, and also the awareness you need in order to prepare yourself for training, and also make sure that you're maintaining your health properly, because it's very demanding. It's a lot more demanding than college soccer. Even though you don't have the element of school, there's still a lot that you need to account for, because you're working harder, and there's a lot more tactics that go into soccer at this level.
Right.
Yeah.
So you joined up with the team in January. What has happened since then? Were you able to practice much before things shut down, or how well do you know your teammates at this point?
Yeah, so I got to South Florida January 15th. So it's been 6 months almost to the day.
Huh.
And we started preseason training January 20th because season starts. It started March 1st, or the inaugural season started March 1st, but it got shut down, I think, March 11th, March 12th. But because this is a new MLS franchise, you had players coming from all over the world. You know, you have guys coming from within this league. We have a lot of players from like South America, Colombia, Argentina. And yeah, so everyone's kind of in like the same boat, you know, like even though we have a lot of veterans and they've competed against each other in previous seasons, I don't think anyone's really played on like the same team before. And so I think everyone kind of dealt with this new team and getting to know each other. Like I think our preseason was very important, just because this was where we were going to build, you know, relationships and bond. And we didn't have previous seasons to do that like other teams do. Right. Creating relationships with our coaching staff, and everyone. It took a lot of, you just had to, like, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of shy, but over time you would get to know the guys because we'd be eating meals together. You know, we would have some team events. But yeah, we spent all the preseason together between January 20th and the end of February, where we traveled throughout Florida because, I mean, the weather was nice here and we didn't need to go anywhere else to train. Right. We went to Port St. Lucie, which was, you know, they had fields there and we were able to train there. And we went to Sarasota, played at the IMG Academy. And then we were in Tampa and we had a preseason game there. So pretty much between January 20th and the end of February, we were doing preseason training. We had preseason matches. I think we had 5 preseason matches. And then we started March 1st against LAFC. Fortunately, we didn't come out with a win, but it was our first game ever as a team, and that was pretty historical. And then we had one more game in against DC United. We didn't win that one either. But then that was when the season was suspended. So we've had, I guess, leading up to our first games, we had a fair amount. We spent a lot of time together, you know. But now with, I guess, the quarantine and COVID-19, there was a period where we couldn't come to our facility and see each other every day, or we had to do we still had to stay fit and do running workouts. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until I think 5 or 6 weeks ago that we started doing individual training. We're actually able to see each other, you know, exercising and working out. Even though we weren't doing it together, we could still see each other. And it was nice to see your teammate putting in work and you putting in work. Sure. So yeah,
So let's back up just a little bit and go back to that first game. So March 1st or whenever it was, what was that like for you? Your first game as a pro, you know, heading out, being there and experiencing not just the first day for you, but the first day for your whole franchise, your whole team. What was that like?
Yeah, so I wasn't on the travel roster. I think we traveled maybe 20 guys. And so I wasn't actually at the LAFC game, but I was able to go to a watch party that our club held and watch the game with some of our staff, which was also pretty cool. But I know, you know, from what I heard from the guys, being able to play in the first game ever for a club was a once in a lifetime experience. Sure. And also against a component like LAFC, who's, you know, very good. It was a good test for us, and we knew as a new team there were going to be some struggles. Sure. But I felt for our first game that we played well, and I mean I was proud of everyone for all the hard work they put in, and you know in soccer, really, regardless if you're the top dog or you're at more towards like the lower of like the table, I feel like at the professional level, it really comes down to whether you score the goal or you don't score the goal, or you make the big play or not. And unfortunately, in that game, we didn't come out on top. But our team, it has been working very, very hard. And, I think we're going to be a big competitor in the rest of our season and in future seasons.
That's great. Well, I love hearing your story because while I'm not a big soccer fan, your story reminds me of another athlete from Northern California who went in an expansion draft and was kind of an underdog and then played buried in the roster for a long time until he won a few Super Bowls. And that's Steve Young, who had a very similar experience to what you're talking about here, where he flew under the radar for a while and worked his way up and had a phenomenal football career, of course. But I love hearing your journey because this is something that I think kids are aspiring to. I have several students in my own classroom that want to be professional soccer players. They know it's a long slog, it's a long journey, but they have their sights set on that. For those kids, what advice do you have for them? Those who really want to pursue this and want to make, being a professional athlete something that they're chasing after, what kind of advice would you give them moving forward?
Yeah, so the advice I would have for any young athletes that want to play professionally, I guess to relate it back to my experience was, it was always a dream of mine. I always thought about it. It was always something that, I thought that was reachable because I had seen, of course, players do it before me. And I knew that it wasn't going to be easy and it was going to be a long journey and there was going to be a lot of hard work involved, probably injuries. But I think first and foremost, you need to create a goal and move towards that goal and know that once you reach that goal, you can set more goals. They could be small goals. Like for me, like I have daily goals, I have weekly goals, I have monthly goals. And when I achieve these goals, I celebrate them. So I'm building like this, I guess I'm building like my character around, wanting to win. I hate losing. And so I make sure that whether at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, like, did I win today? And I'll know with how my day went, whether I won or lost. And so that really helped me define what I needed to do in order to improve my game and also what I needed to work on. And it was now that I'm a pro, I'm looking back and I wish I had expressed myself more growing up as like an athlete, because being a soccer player, when I'm on the field, that was where I could go and not worry about really anything. I could just play. And so being able to not only express yourself on the field, but also off the field is very important. And that's how I got into writing, and that's how I got into art and some of the other things I do off the field. But just knowing that it's gonna take a lot of hard work at training, doing extra work, putting in extra work. A quote that I always thought about growing up as like a young athlete is, when you're not doing work, your opponent's doing work or your competitor's doing work. And that was something that I kept with me. And I would always make sure, whether it was after training or on a Sunday, I would at least do something to improve my game. And recently, I started working on visualization. And this is something that I've heard professional athletes do before. And that, they say it really helped them. And it's visualizing yourself at training or in the game, visualizing yourself in the stadium, some of the certain movements you do. Like I started visualizing what like the smell of grass was, and like, like the sound of like my gloves when I strap them on. And this made my approach to training not only like physical, but mental. And so like I'm creating this space within myself where I can also go to improve. And like, I could visualize myself making 10 out of 10 saves and hitting every single target on long balls. And then I find myself in training, I have a lot more confidence when I'm in those moments. So visualization is huge. And I wish I'd done it more when I was younger. And yeah, that is some advice that I would, I'm happy to share with any young athletes.
That's great advice. You know, setting those daily goals and having those short-term goals are important. But we actually had a guest on in season 1. Kyle Collinsworth talked about visualization, and he even wrote himself a letter and saying, on this day, I'm going to be playing for the Dallas Mavericks in the NBA, and I'm going to be doing these things. And then he wrote that as if it was a journal entry, but 6 months into the future. And when that date came, he read that journal entry again, and he was playing for the Dallas Mavericks, and he was living those dreams because he had pictured it and visualized that. So we know that can really get you ahead, not just in sports, but in life. Visualization is a great strategy. Now, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your story. And we've focused so far just on the soccer and your journey through soccer, but there's a lot more to it, especially when you're leaving home and going pro and moving across the country. What have been some of the challenges and struggles aside from COVID, but just in the last 6 months as you've really uprooted yourself, moved across the country? What have been some of the difficult things that you've had to go through?
Yeah. So, I guess starting off, just leaving my family and my friends in California and moving to the other side of the country was difficult because there would be a time change. I wouldn't be able to have that physical connection with many of my friends and family. And so I wouldn't say I'm lonely, but I guess living on my own definitely has made me accountable for myself. Of course, I do have peers and friends who I check in with, and we kind of act as accountability partners. But the biggest challenge was one of the biggest challenges was just making sure that I'm still trying to improve my game and my fitness and my health, and knowing that it's a lot of it is on me. Now that I'm a professional, I take a lot more responsibility. And yeah, another challenge I've dealt with is the language barrier between me and some of my teammates, because we do have some Spanish speakers, and our staff they're Spanish speakers. So I've been working on my Spanish ever since I got here. I'm slowly learning, but it's bit by bit, and I don't think it's gonna. I'm not gonna learn it. It's gonna take some time,
Right.
And so that's definitely been challenging. I'm starting to understand it more. Just when it's spoken very fast, it's hard for me to understand. And so, I'm starting to get the base down, but still, it's definitely been a challenge to communicate, but also just build relationships with, when there's a whole language barrier. And yeah, another challenge would be me, getting used to the weather and the humidity.
Yeah.
It's so different than Northern California, because you have, or especially the Bay Area in Berkeley, it was always maybe between 60, 70 degrees, didn't get too hot, and it'd be crisp, nice air in the mornings. And now here it's hot, but also it's humid. And so when you're breathing, it feels it's hard to catch your breath in between sets, during your workouts, and in training. So that's been definitely something that I've had to get acclimated to. And the way I've kind of dealt with that is practicing breath work, and working on my breathing. So then when I am in training, I can implement some of the things I learned in breath work to help me catch my breath or help me stay focused. And yeah, I guess the other challenges I've dealt with would just be on the field and adjusting to, the level of play. But I think that's those have been the big things that have kind of really tested me so far.
Cool.
I do have, I have a wonderful girlfriend who lives in Los Angeles, and we did long distance through college. She went to UCLA, but now being across the country, it's definitely tested us a little bit. So, of course, with all of our relationships, I've had to make more of an effort to reach out and still staying connected, just because of the time difference and the distance difference. So that's also been a challenge of mine.
Right. Well, it sounds like you're really thriving despite all the challenges and obstacles you faced. It's really inspiring to hear your story and see you living your dreams right now. Good luck with the language. When I lived in Miami, my Spanish actually came along really well. So watch those novelas and it will come. You'll do fine. So, well, thank you so much for your time today, Drake. If kids want to follow you like on social media or something, is there a place where you're active in social media?
Yeah, so I don't necessarily use Twitter, but I use Instagram.
Okay.
And my Instagram handle is ds_calendar in all lowercase.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really the only. I've been planning on bringing my Twitter back, but I've just been using Instagram lately.
Right. Well, that's great. We'll link up in the description on the video to your Instagram, and so people can follow you and cheer for this new team, which is pretty exciting to have this new team in MLS. So good luck this season. Thanks for your time. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Of course, Tyler, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share my story and also be an influence to the younger generations.